Before we embark on this heartwarming journey of kindness, destiny, and a love that transforms lives, tell us in the comments below, what city are you watching this video from? Let's connect across the globe and see how far this tale of extraordinary grace can reach. The humble student, the desperate millionaire, and a bus ride to destiny. "Sir, you need to pay the fare or get off the bus," the driver yelled at Santiago as other passengers began to complain. "Please, my wallet was stolen 2 blocks ago. I just need to get downtown," Santiago pleaded, feeling everyone's annoyed stares. "I've heard that story 1,000 times. Either pay or get off." Esperanza watched the scene from her window seat. The man looked desperate, checking his green jacket pockets over and over. Something in his expression reminded her of her own grandfather when he would get lost in the streets and didn't know how to get home. Without a second thought, she stood up from her seat. "I'll pay his fare," Esperanza said, walking to the front of the bus. Santiago looked at her, surprised. A young woman with reddish hair and green eyes smiled naturally at him as she pulled a crumpled 20,000 peso bill from her pocket. "No, miss, it's not necessary." "Of course it is," she interrupted, handing the bill to the driver. "We all need help sometimes." The driver grudgingly took the money and continued driving. The other passengers returned to their conversations. Santiago stood next to Esperanza, unsure what to say. "Thank you very much. I'll really pay you back," he told her, studying her face. "My name is Santiago." "Esperanza," she replied, returning to her seat. "And don't worry about the money, but that was your last bill, wasn't it?" Esperanza blushed slightly. It was true. Those 20,000 pesos were all she had for lunch and the ride home. "It doesn't matter. I'll walk a little further. The exercise will do me good." Santiago sat in the empty seat next to her, admiring her genuine smile. It had been years since anyone had shown him such kindness without knowing him. "What do you do?" he asked, trying to keep the conversation going. "I'm studying nursing at the National University. This is my last year," Esperanza replied, looking out the window at the streets of Medellin. "I work part-time at a pharmacy to pay for my studies. It must be hard to study and work at the same time. It's worth it. I've always wanted to help people," she said, her eyes shining. "My grandmother says God places us in others' lives when they need us most." Santiago felt something strange in his chest. This woman spoke with a passion he had lost long ago, focused only on growing his company and meeting family expectations. "And what do you do?" Esperanza asked. I work in technology," Santiago replied, avoiding details. "Nothing too exciting." The bus stopped at the downtown stop, and Esperanza prepared to get off. "This is my stop," she said, taking her worn backpack. "Wait, I need your number to pay you back," Santiago insisted, standing up. "It's not necessary, really," Esperanza replied, already walking towards the door. "Have a good day, Santiago." "Esperanza, wait!" But she had already gotten off the bus. Santiago watched her walk away down the sidewalk with her determined stride and backpack slung over her shoulder. For the first time in years, he felt completely lost. But not because he didn't know where he was, but because he had let someone so special go. The bus continued on its route, and Santiago kept thinking about those green eyes that had looked at him with such kindness. He remembered her words. God places us in others' lives when they need us most. Maybe she was right. That night, Esperanza arrived tired at her small apartment in the Buenos Aires neighborhood. Her grandmother, Mrs. Carmen, was watching the news on television, waiting for her with dinner ready. "How was your day, my love?" the old woman asked, noticing that her granddaughter seemed thoughtful. "Normal, Grandma. Just something curious happened on the bus." "What was it?" Esperanza told her about the man who couldn't pay his fare and how she had decided to help him. "You did well, honey. Charity always comes back multiplied," Mrs. Carmen said, stroking her hair. What was this man like? He looked like someone important, but he was very scared. I felt sorry for him. At that moment, the evening news began. The anchor announced, "Businessman Santiago Restrepo, CEO of Techno Solutions, and one of the richest men in the country, was a victim of a robbery this morning while conducting market research on public transport." Esperanza's spoon clattered from her hand when she saw Santiago's photo on the screen. "Oh my God," she whispered. "What's wrong, child?" "Grandma, that's the man I paid the fare for." Mrs. Carmen looked at the television and then at her granddaughter, her eyes wide. "That millionaire?" Esperanza nodded, unable to believe what she was seeing. The man she had known as a simple technology worker was actually one of Colombia's most successful entrepreneurs. "What have I done?" she murmured, covering her face with her hands. "What your heart dictated," her grandmother replied, hugging her. "But be careful, honey. Very different worlds sometimes bring trouble." Esperanza stayed awake all night, thinking about Santiago and wondering if she would ever see him again. Santiago couldn't concentrate on anything. 3 days had passed since the encounter on the bus, and Esperanza's image wouldn't leave his mind. Sitting in his 30th floor office, with a panoramic view of Medellin, he looked out at the streets where she walked every day. "Mr. Restrepo, the private investigator, is here," his secretary announced over the intercom. "Send him in." A middle-aged man entered with a folder in his hands. "Mr. Santiago, I've checked all the security cameras on the bus route. I have some images, but the quality isn't very good," he said, showing some blurry photos. "All I know is that her name is Esperanza, and she got off at the downtown stop." "Is that all?" Santiago asked, disappointed. In a city of 2 million people, without a last name or more data, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. Santiago dismissed the investigator and made a decision that his employees would consider crazy. Every day, at the same time, he would take the same bus, hoping to find her. Meanwhile, Esperanza couldn't stop thinking about the encounter. During her university classes, her mind wandered to those brown eyes that had looked at her with so much gratitude. "Esperanza, are you paying attention?" her intensive care nursing professor asked her. "Yes, professor, I'm sorry." Her best friend, Lucia, waited for her at the end of class. "What's wrong with you? You've been in the clouds for 3 days." "It's complicated," Esperanza replied, closing her books. "Is it about a man?" Esperanza told her the whole story. Lucia's jaw dropped. "Santiago Restrepo, the millionaire, and you're not going to look for him. Why? We're from completely different worlds. Besides, he must have a girlfriend, a wife, or something. But destiny helped you meet him. That means something." That afternoon, Esperanza arrived home early. Her grandmother was preparing agua de panela in the kitchen. "Grandma, do you think I was wrong not to give him my number?" Mrs. Carmen set down the pot and sat next to her granddaughter. "Honey, the heart doesn't understand social classes, but life does. That man can have all the money in the world. But what are his intentions with you? He just wanted to pay me back. Rich men are used to everything having a price. Be careful not to become one of their whims." Over the next 2 weeks, something extraordinary happened in Medellin without anyone realizing it. Santiago and Esperanza took the same bus on the same route, but at different times. Santiago got on at 7:30 in the morning, traveled the entire route to the end, and returned. Esperanza took the same bus at 2:15 in the afternoon, after her classes. The drivers already knew Santiago. At first, they thought he was crazy, but the generous tips he gave them convinced them not to ask questions. "Are you sure you don't want me to drive you in my private car?" one of the drivers asked him. "It's more comfortable." "No, thank you. It has to be this specific bus," Santiago replied, scanning every female face that got on. One rainy Friday afternoon, Fate finally intervened. The 2:15 bus broke down, and Esperanza had to wait for the next one, which arrived at 3:20. Santiago, for his part, had decided to do an extra round that afternoon. When Esperanza got on the bus, their eyes met immediately. Santiago was sitting in the same spot where they had met. "Esperanza?" he said, unable to believe his luck. "Santiago?" she replied, surprised but smiling. "May I?" he asked, pointing to the empty seat beside her. Esperanza nodded. Santiago sat down and pulled an envelope from his jacket. "I've been looking for you," he confessed. "This is for you." Esperanza opened the envelope and found 50,000 pesos. "It's too much. It was only 20,000. You didn't help me for money, but out of kindness. That's priceless," Santiago said, looking at her intently. "Besides, I saw the news. You already know who I really am. That's why you didn't tell me? Because with you, I could just be Santiago, not the CEO of a company. It had been years since anyone treated me like a normal person." Esperanza put the money in her backpack, feeling uncomfortable. "May I buy you a coffee?" Santiago asked. "To thank you properly." Esperanza hesitated. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind, but curiosity was stronger. "All right, but just one coffee." Santiago smiled, as he hadn't since he was a child. "I know a perfect place." They got off at the next stop, and Santiago led her to a small cafe in the historic center. It was a simple place, full of students and workers. "Don't you prefer something more elegant?" Esperanza asked, noticing that Santiago looked out of place in his expensive suit. "I like this place because it reminds me that real life exists outside of air-conditioned offices." They sat at a table by the window. Santiago ordered 2 coffees and a piece of tres leches cake to share. "Tell me about your studies," Santiago said, genuinely interested. "I graduate in 6 months. I want to specialize in pediatric nursing, but specializations are expensive." "Why did you choose nursing?" Esperanza's eyes lit up. "When I was 12, my grandmother had a very severe diabetic crisis. The hospital nurse not only saved her life, but taught me how to care for her at home. From that day on, I knew I wanted to be like her." Santiago listened to every word, fascinated by the passion in her voice. "And you? Did you always want to be an entrepreneur?" Santiago's expression saddened a little. "My parents died in an accident when I was 25. I inherited a small software company and turned it into what it is today. But honestly, sometimes I don't know if I did it for them or to prove something to the world." Esperanza looked at him with understanding. "We both help people, just in different ways." "You do help people. I just move numbers around on a computer. The jobs your company creates also help families." Santiago was surprised by Esperanza's perspective. No one had ever made him see his work that way. They talked for 2 hours. When they realized, it was already night. "I have to go. My grandmother worries," Esperanza said, looking at her watch. "Can I see you again?" Santiago asked. "Fu. Esperanza thought for a moment. "On Sunday, there's a craft fair at Berrio Park. If you want, we could meet there." "Perfect. What time?" "At 3 in the afternoon, by Bolivar's statue." Santiago walked her to the bus stop, and they said goodbye with a handshake that lasted longer than necessary. As the bus pulled away, Santiago felt his life had just taken a different turn. And on the bus, Esperanza smiled, thinking that perhaps different worlds could meet sometimes. Sunday arrived faster than Esperanza expected. She stood in front of the mirror in her small room, changing her blouse for the 3rd time. "Why so much fuss if you're just going to walk in a park?" Mrs. Carmen asked her from the doorway. "It's not a date, Grandma. We're just friends." "Friends don't get as nervous as you are," the old woman said with a mischievous smile. "But remember what I told you. Rich people have their own rules." Esperanza arrived punctually at Berrio Park. Santiago was already there, but he looked very different. Instead of his elegant suit, he wore jeans, a simple white shirt, and sneakers. He looked younger, more approachable. "I thought you wouldn't come," he said, smiling as he saw her. "I'm always punctual," Esperanza replied. "You look different." "Better or worse?" "More normal," she laughed. "Like the person I met on the bus." They walked among the craft stalls. Santiago observed everything with curiosity, as if it were the first time he had visited such a place. "Have you never been to a fair?" Esperanza asked, noticing his expression. "To be honest, no. I'm always working on weekends, and when I go out, it's to expensive restaurants or business events." They stopped at a stall selling handmade hammocks. The artisan, an older woman, recognized Esperanza. "Esperancita, how's your grandmother doing?" "Very well, Mrs. Rosa. How are sales?" "Slow, my child. People no longer appreciate handmade things." Santiago observed the conversation, then approached the hammocks. "How much is this one?" he asked, pointing to the largest one. 200,000 pesos, young man. It's woven with pure cotton thread." "I'll take 3, Santiago said, pulling out his wallet. Mrs. Rosa and Esperanza were surprised. "Santiago, why do you need 3 hammocks?" Esperanza whispered. "One for my office, one to give away, and one, well, maybe someday I'll have a garden to put it in." Esperanza looked at him strangely. There was something in the way he said, "someday," that sounded hopeful. They continued walking and arrived at a typical food stall. "Have you tried arepa con hogao?" Esperanza asked. "What's that?" "Seriously?" She laughed. "Mrs. Maria, 2 arepas con hogao, please." They sat on a bench to eat. Santiago bit into the arepa, and his expression changed completely. "This is incredible. Why don't they serve this in fancy restaurants?" "Because fancy food isn't always the tastiest," Esperanza replied. "My grandmother says the best food is made with love, not money." "Your grandmother seems very wise. Would you like to meet her?" Santiago almost choked on his arepa. "Are you seriously inviting me to your house?" "Only if you want. She makes the best sancocho in all of Medellin." "I'd love to." That afternoon, Santiago followed Esperanza through the steep streets of the Buenos Aires neighborhood. It was the first time he had visited that part of the city. The houses were small but colorful, and people greeted Esperanza affectionately. "Here it is," she said, opening the door to a 2-story house with a small front garden. Mrs. Carmen was waiting for them in the living room, dressed in her best dress and clearly nervous. "Grandma, this is Santiago." "Good afternoon, Mrs. Carmen," Santiago said, bowing slightly. "Thank you for having me in your home." The old woman studied him from head to toe. "Sit down, young man. Would you like some agua de panela?" "I'd love some." During dinner, Mrs. Carmen interrogated Santiago with the skill of a detective. She asked him about his family, his intentions, his work, and his future plans. "Why are you looking for my granddaughter so much?" she asked directly. Santiago put his fork down on the plate and looked at Esperanza before answering. "Because in 35 years of my life, no one had ever helped me without expecting anything in return. Esperanza gave me back the faith that there are good people in the world. And what do you want from her? To get to know her better, to learn from her, maybe to be a better person myself." Mrs. Carmen exchanged a glance with Esperanza. "Rich people have strange ways of showing interest," she murmured. After dinner, Santiago helped wash the dishes, something that surprised both Esperanza and her grandmother. "Don't you have maids at home?" Mrs. Carmen asked. "Yes, but my parents taught me that one should know how to do things for oneself." When they said goodbye at the door, Santiago told Esperanza, "Thank you for this afternoon. It's been years since I felt so normal." "Do you want to see each other again?" she asked. "Every day, if you'll allow me." Over the next few weeks, Santiago and Esperanza met constantly. He would pick her up after classes and take her to simple places: the Botanical Garden, the Museum of Antioquia, walks through the historic center. One afternoon, while having lunch at a popular restaurant, Santiago made her an unexpected proposal. "Would you like to work at my company?" Esperanza looked up from her tray. "How?" "You could be the Human Resources Area Coordinator. The salary would be $3 million a month, plus benefits. You could leave your studies and—" "No!" Esperanza interrupted. "My studies are not for sale, Santiago. I want to be a nurse, because that is the only thing I want to be." Santiago was silent, shocked by her response. "Besides," Esperanza continued, "if I accept that job, what would people think? What would I think of myself? That I'm an intelligent woman with opportunities? Or that I'm an opportunist who changed her future for money?" Santiago looked at her with growing admiration. He was used to everyone having a price, but Esperanza had just shown him that her dignity was worth more than any offer. "You're right, I'm sorry for suggesting that. Don't apologize. Just understand that my life has a value that isn't measured in pesos." That night, Santiago couldn't sleep. For the first time in his life, he had found someone who wanted nothing from him except his company, and he was falling hopelessly in love. Esperanza, for her part, also felt something special. Santiago was gentle, intelligent, and beneath all his wealth, there was a lonely man who just wanted to be loved for who he was, not for what he had. "Do you like that boy?" Mrs. Carmen asked her one night at dinner. "I think so, Grandma." "And him?" "I think so too." "Then be careful, honey. Love between different classes is complicated. There are always secrets." Esperanza didn't know how true that warning would be, but she would soon find out in the most painful way. After a month of daily meetings, Santiago decided it was time to do something special. He reserved a table at the most elegant restaurant in town, a place with a panoramic view of the city. Esperanza felt uncomfortable from the moment they arrived. The maitre d' greeted them with exaggerated bows toward Santiago, and she noticed the curious glances of other diners. "Are you sure this is the right place?" Esperanza asked, looking at the menu prices. "I wanted you to experience something special," Santiago replied, taking her hand across the table. "You deserve it. Simple places can also be special." Santiago realized his mistake, but it was too late to change his plan. During dinner, they talked as usual, but Esperanza looked tense. "What's wrong? You're very quiet." "Nothing. It's just that this isn't me, Santiago. I don't feel comfortable here. But I want you to know this world too. To know that you can have this if you want." "What if I don't want it?" The question caught Santiago by surprise. He had assumed that anyone would want to live in luxury. "Why wouldn't you want it?" "Because I'd rather be happy with little than unhappy with a lot." After dessert, Santiago ordered a bottle of champagne. His hands trembled slightly as he filled the glasses. "Esperanza, there's something I need to tell you." She noticed the change in his tone of voice. "What is it?" Santiago took a deep breath. He knew this moment would come, but he hadn't found the right way to say it. "In these days with you, I've discovered what it truly means to be in love." Esperanza smiled, feeling her heart race. "I've also felt something very special with you, but there's something you need to know before this goes any further." Santiago's serious tone made Esperanza straighten in her chair. "What is it?" "I'm engaged." The words fell like a bucket of cold water. Esperanza felt the world stop around her. "What did you say?" "I'm engaged to marry Isabella Dominguez. It's an arrangement between our families." Esperanza stood up from the table so quickly that the chair wobbled. "An arrangement? And why didn't you tell me from the beginning?" "Because with you, I can be myself. That engagement is just business, but this is real." "Real?" Esperanza shouted, not caring about the stares of other diners. "Does it seem real To make me believe there was something between us when you have a fiancé? Esperanza, please let me explain. Explain what? That I'm your entertainment while you marry someone else? Santiago also stood up, desperate. It's not like that. The marriage to Isabella is for a business merger. We've been planning it for years. But what I feel for you is completely different. And what am I? Your secret lover? The poor girl who makes you feel better about yourself? No. You are the first person I've truly fallen in love with. Esperanza grabbed her purse, tears streaming down her cheeks. Do you know what the worst part of all this is? That for a moment I believed it was possible. That I believed someone like you could fall in love with someone like me without ulterior motives. It is possible. That's why I'm here. Telling you the truth. The truth is you lied to me from day one. The truth is you have a fiancé, and I was foolish enough to believe this was real. Santiago tried to stop her as she walked past him. Esperanza, wait. We can fix this. She turned to him with a look Santiago would never forget. Fix what? Are you going to cancel your millionaire marriage for a poor student? Are you going to disappoint your partner and your fiancé for me? Santiago remained silent, and that silence was the answer Esperanza needed. I thought so, she said, wiping her tears. Goodbye, Santiago, and thank you for reminding me why my grandmother was right about rich people. Esperanza left the restaurant, leaving Santiago standing among the tables, feeling more alone than ever. Several diners looked at him curiously, but he paid them no attention. He had lost the most valuable thing he had found in his life. Outside, Esperanza walked several blocks in the rain before getting a taxi. She cried all the way home, feeling stupid for having believed that a fairy tale could be real. When she arrived home, Mrs. Carmen was waiting awake in the living room. What happened, my child? She asked, seeing the tears. Esperanza told her everything. Her grandmother hugged her as she cried on her shoulder. I'm so sorry, Grandma. You were right. No, my love, you were right to believe in love. He was to blame for not being honest. How could I be so naive? Because you have a noble heart, and that's not a bad thing, even if it sometimes hurts. That night, Esperanza couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, remembering every moment with Santiago, and wondering how much had been real and how much had just been her imagination. In his penthouse, Santiago also didn't sleep. He walked around his apartment all night, feeling empty. He had all the money in the world, but he had lost the only thing that truly mattered. For the first time in years, Santiago cried, not for the company, not for business, but for having hurt the only person who had loved him for who he really was. At 5 a.m, he picked up his phone and dialed Isabella's number. He needed to talk to her, though he didn't know exactly what he was going to say. Meanwhile, Esperanza woke up early and prepared for university. She had to continue with her life, even if she felt heartbroken. Her dream of being a nurse was more important than any man, no matter how rich. But what neither of them knew was that this separation would only be the beginning of a test that would determine if their love was strong enough to overcome class differences and past lies. 2 months had passed since that terrible night at the restaurant. Santiago mechanically went about his work meetings, but everyone noticed his change. His employees whispered that the boss looked like a ghost of himself. Santiago, we need to talk, Isabella Dominguez said, entering his office without warning on a Tuesday afternoon. Santiago looked up from the papers he was pretending to read. Isabella was an elegant 30-year-old woman, intelligent and direct. Their engagement had been arranged by their parents since they were teenagers. Hello, Isabella. What do you need? For you to tell me what's wrong. You've been like a zombie for 2 months, and my dad is starting to worry about the merger. Santiago sighed and leaned back in his chair. I'm fine. Just tired. Don't lie to me. I've known you since we were 15, Isabella said, sitting across from him. Is there another woman? The direct question caught Santiago off guard. Isabella had always been so straightforward. Why do you ask that? Because I've never seen you like this. And because honestly, Santiago, neither of us is in love with the other. Santiago looked at her, surprised. Isabella, we both know this marriage is convenient for our families, but you deserve to be happy. If there's someone else, you should fight for that person. It's complicated. Love is always complicated, but living without it is worse. Meanwhile, at the university, Esperanza intensely focused on her studies. Her classmates noticed that she no longer smiled as before, but her academic performance had improved. She had taken refuge in books to avoid thinking about Santiago. Esperanza, this arrived for you, the faculty secretary said, handing her an elegant envelope. It was an official notification that she had won a full scholarship to specialize in pediatric nursing at Javeriana University. The scholarship covered all expenses for 2 years. Esperanza, that's incredible, Lucia shouted when she found out. How did you get that scholarship? I didn't even know you had applied for it. That night, Esperanza excitedly told her grandmother. It's strange, honey. Scholarships don't just appear out of nowhere, Mrs. Carmen said, reading the letter. Maybe someone recommended my academic record, but something didn't feel right. Esperanza decided to investigate. The next day, she went to the university's scholarship office. Miss Morales, your scholarship was funded by a private foundation, the coordinator explained. It's anonymous, but very prestigious. Can you give me any details? I'm sorry. It's confidential. I can only tell you that someone reviewed your file and considered you deserved this opportunity. Esperanza left the office with a growing suspicion. That afternoon, after much thought, she decided to do something she had avoided for 2 months. Find Santiago. She arrived at the Techno Solutions building at 5 p.m. Her heart pounded as she walked to reception. I need to speak with Mr. Restrepo, she told the receptionist. Do you have an appointment? No, but it's urgent. Tell him it's Esperanza Morales. The receptionist made a call, and after a few minutes she said, You can go up to the 30th floor. Esperanza waited for 3 hours in the waiting room. Employees looked at her curiously, wondering who this young woman was, who had managed to get the boss to suspend all his meetings. At 8 p.m., Santiago emerged from a boardroom accompanied by several men in elegant suits. When he saw her, his face lit up for the first time in months. Esperanza. The other men looked at the scene with interest. Santiago walked over to them. Gentlemen, we'll continue tomorrow. When they were alone in the lobby, Esperanza confronted him. How dare you manipulate my future? She yelled, not caring if some late employees might hear. What are you talking about? The scholarship. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Santiago ran a hand through his hair, clearly uncomfortable. Esperanza, let me explain. Explain what? That you decided to play with my career, just like you played with my feelings. At that moment, the elevator opened, and Isabella appeared in the lobby. She had come to pick up Santiago because his meeting had run longer than usual. Excuse me, Isabella said to Esperanza. You must be the reason Santiago just gave up $50 million. Esperanza was speechless, looking at Isabella and then at Santiago. I'm Isabella Dominguez, his ex-fiancée, as of exactly an hour ago, Isabella continued with a smile. Nice to meet you. Ex-fiancée? Esperanza asked, confused. Santiago approached her. Esperanza, I broke off the engagement. I canceled the merger. Isabella and I just signed the dissolution of the partnership. Why? Because I realized I had lost the money, but I found what's truly worthwhile, Santiago said, taking her hands. The scholarship wasn't to manipulate you. It was because I genuinely believe in your talent, and I wanted you to have the opportunities you deserve, without strings attached, without conditions. Isabella approached both of them. Santiago told me everything about you, and he's right. True love cannot be bought or planned like a business. Esperanza looked at Santiago, tears in her eyes. You lost $50 million? And I would do it 1,000 times over. Money can be made again. But someone like you appears once in a lifetime. Esperanza covered her face with her hands, overwhelmed by emotions. I don't know what to think. I don't know if I can trust you again. Then give me the opportunity to show you that I've changed, that I'm completely honest now. Isabella discreetly said goodbye, leaving them alone. I need time, Esperanza finally said. I need to process all this. I'll give you all the time you need, Santiago replied. But please, don't close the door on me completely. Esperanza looked into his eyes, and for the first time in 2 months, she saw the man she had fallen in love with on the bus. The scholarship really has no conditions. None. It's yours, regardless of what you decide about us. Esperanza nodded and headed towards the elevator. Santiago, she said before the doors closed. Thank you for being honest this time. When the elevator closed, Santiago stood in the empty lobby, feeling for the first time in months that perhaps, just perhaps, there was hope of winning back the love of his life. 3 weeks after that confrontation in the office, Esperanza had made a decision. She would accept the scholarship, but on her own terms. She wanted to make sure Santiago understood that her future did not depend on him. One Saturday morning, she arrived at the Techno Solutions building again. This time, there were no employees, only the security guard. I'm here to see Mr. Restrepo, she told him. He's on the 30th floor, miss. He's been working all night. Esperanza went up in the elevator, her heart racing. She found Santiago in his office, surrounded by papers, and looking like he hadn't slept. Esperanza, he said, surprised to see her. What are you doing here so early? I came to give you an answer. Santiago immediately stood up, leaving everything he was doing. And what is it? I'm going to accept the scholarship, but I want you to understand something. I'm doing it because I deserve it, not because you paid for it. Of course, you deserve it more than anyone. Esperanza walked to the window that overlooked the entire city. I also want you to know that I never stopped loving you. Santiago felt his heart stop. Seriously? As much as I tried, I couldn't forget you. But I need you to promise me something. Anything. No more lies. Never again. If we're going to try this again, it has to be with complete honesty. Santiago approached her slowly. I promise I will never lie to you about anything again, and there's something I need to tell you right now. Esperanza tensed. What is it? I'm creating a new company, a telemedicine company. I want to connect rural communities with specialists in the city, and I'd like you to be the director of the nursing program. Santiago! Wait, let me finish. Not as a favor, but because you are the most qualified person I know. Someone who understands medicine and who truly cares about helping others. Esperanza stared at him. Are you serious? Completely. I've spent weeks developing the project. Look, he said, showing her a folder full of blueprints and documents. It would be called Connect Health. Esperanza reviewed the papers, impressed by the depth of the project. This is incredible. You could help thousands of people. We could help thousands of people, Santiago corrected, if you agree to work with me, as partners, and if you allow me, as something more. Esperanza put the papers down on the desk and walked over to Santiago. Are you sure this is what you want? A simpler life, fewer luxuries, less money? Esperanza, these last few months without you taught me something. All the luxuries in the world are worth nothing if you don't have someone to share them with, someone who loves you for who you really are. Santiago took her hands. I love you. Not the idea of you, not the challenge you represent, but you. Your laughter, your determination, your way of seeing the world. I love you, and I want to build a life with you. Esperanza felt tears running down her cheeks. I love you too, Santiago, but I'm scared. Of what? that this is a dream, and I'll wake up in my tiny bed with my grandmother yelling that I'm late for classes." Santiago laughed and hugged her. "It's not a dream, and if it is, then let's dream it together." They kissed for the first time, a kiss that tasted of new beginnings and fulfilled promises. 6 months later, in Mrs. Carmen's small backyard, Santiago and Esperanza were married in an intimate ceremony. Isabella attended as a bridesmaid, already engaged to Dr. Andres Medina, a pediatrician she had met at the hospital where Esperanza did her practical training. "Who would have thought breaking off my engagement would be the best thing that ever happened to me?" Isabella whispered to Esperanza as she adjusted her dress. "Destiny has strange ways of working," Esperanza replied, smiling. The ceremony was officiated by the neighborhood priest who had baptized Esperanza as a baby. There was no elegant orchestra, but a group of mariachis who were friends of Mrs. Carmen. There were no expensive flowers, but those that grew in Grandma's garden. But when Santiago saw Esperanza walk towards him in a simple white lace dress that had belonged to his mother, he knew it was the most perfect moment of his life. "Are you sure you don't regret it?" Esperanza asked him when the priest asked them to join hands. "The only thing I regret is taking so long to take public transport," Santiago replied, making all the guests laugh. After the ceremony, they ate sancocho prepared by Mrs. Carmen and danced late into the night in the small courtyard decorated with Christmas lights. "Do you know what's most ironic about all this?" Esperanza said to Santiago as they danced slowly. "What? That the best deal of your life cost only 20,000 pesos? Santiago spun her around and pulled her close. "No, the best deal of my life was free. It only cost being honest and being willing to lose everything for love." Connect Health began in operations 3 months after the wedding. In the first year, they connected 50 rural communities with specialists from Medellin, Bogotá, and Cali. Esperanza directed a team of nurses who traveled to the most remote towns, while Santiago managed the technology and alliances with hospitals. 1 year after they got married, while reviewing their company's impact reports in the same office where they had reconciled, Esperanza gave Santiago some news. "I have something to tell you." "What is it?" "We're going to need a bigger office." "Why, are we hiring more people?" Esperanza smiled and placed Santiago's hand on her belly. "Because we're going to have to make room for a crib." Santiago froze for a moment. Then he shouted with joy and lifted her into his arms, spinning around the office. "Are you pregnant?" 2 months. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "I wanted to be sure, and I wanted to tell you here, where we decided to be honest forever." That night they went to tell Mrs. Carmen the news, who cried with happiness as she hugged them. "My great-grandchildren are going to grow up knowing both the value of work and the value of love," the old woman said. "That's the best thing you can give them." 3 years after that rainy afternoon on the bus, Santiago and Esperanza had built not only a successful company, but a family united by something stronger than money. True love, honesty, and the determination to make the world a better place. And every time they traveled through the city, they never failed to pass by the stop where it all began, remembering that the best encounters in life sometimes happen when we least expect them, in the most ordinary places, with people who are willing to help without expecting anything in return. 5 years had passed since that intimate wedding in Mrs. Carmen's backyard, and Santiago and Esperanza's life had flourished in ways neither of them would have imagined. Connect Health had expanded throughout Latin America. What began as a dream in an office in Medellin now connected more than 300 rural communities with urban specialists from Mexico to Argentina. Esperanza, now a pediatric nursing specialist, directed a program that had revolutionized medical care in remote areas, while Santiago had developed a technological platform that allowed remote diagnoses and real-time medical training. In their beautiful home overlooking the Medellin mountains, which Santiago had specially designed to have a large garden, two little ones ran around. Maria Carmen, aged 4, named after the great-grandmother who adored her, and Santiago Jr., aged 2, who had inherited his mother's green eyes and his father's mischievous smile. "Mommy, Mommy, Grandma Carmen is teaching me to plant medicinal herbs," Maria Carmen shouted, running from the garden with her hands full of dirt. Mrs. Carmen, now 78, but with the energy of someone much younger, appeared behind her carrying Santiago Jr. "This girl has green thumbs, just like her great-grandmother," the old woman said, smiling. "And this little one wants to eat all the plants instead of planting them." Esperanza laughed as she wiped her daughter's hands. "Grandma can't teach the children that plants are eaten just like that. Why not? That's how I learned, and look how well I've done." Santiago appeared in the kitchen, arriving from work earlier than usual. He now managed the company in a completely different way. Fewer unnecessary meetings, more time in the field with communities, and always home for family dinner. "How are my loves?" he asked, kissing Esperanza and picking up Maria Carmen. "Daddy, did you know chamomile cures stomach aches?" his daughter asked him seriously. "Really? And who taught you that?" "Grandma Carmen says that before, there were no doctors in the villages, and people cured themselves with plants." Santiago looked at Mrs. Carmen with admiration. The old woman had begun working with Connect Health, teaching traditional medicine that was now combined with modern diagnoses. Her knowledge had been fundamental in gaining the trust of rural communities. "I have a surprise," Santiago announced. "Isabella and Andres are coming for dinner with their twins." "The twins!" Maria Carmen shouted excitedly. Isabella had married Dr. Andres Medina 2 years after Santiago and Esperanza's wedding. They now had 1-year-old twins, Carlos and Elena. The friendship between the two couples had become genuine and deep, and the children grew up like cousins. That night, while the adults chatted in the garden and the children played under Mrs. Carmen's supervision, Santiago proposed something to Esperanza. "How about we go for a walk?" "Where?" "To a special place." They walked hand in hand through the streets of the Buenos Aires neighborhood, which had improved considerably thanks to several development programs that Connect Health had implemented. They reached the old bus stop where they had met. Now, there was a small plaque that read, "Connect Health Stop, where dreams come true." The company had sponsored the renovation of the entire station. "Do you ever regret anything?" Esperanza asked him, looking at the place where it all began. "Only one thing," Santiago replied, hugging her from behind. "Which one?" "Taking so long to realize that true wealth isn't measured in income, but in moments like this." At that instant, the same bus from the route that had changed their lives passed by. Now it was decorated with Connect Health advertising, and the message, "Connecting Hearts, Healing Communities." "Is that advertising?" Esperanza said, pointing to the bus. "It was Maria Carmen's idea. She says her favorite company is her parents because it helps sick children. She's proud of us, just as I'm proud of you, of the man you became." Santiago turned to look her in the eyes. "Everything I am now is because an extraordinary woman believed I could be better. No, love, you were always good. You just needed someone to help you remember." That night they returned home to find a surprise. Isabella and Andres had organized a small celebration for their 5th wedding anniversary in the garden. There were lights strung between the trees, flowers from Mrs. Carmen's garden, and the same mariachi group that had played at their wedding. "We couldn't let this date pass without celebrating," Isabella said, hugging Esperanza. "You showed us that happy endings do exist, and that true love can change not only lives, but entire communities," Andres added. During the celebration, Mrs. Carmen asked for silence to make a toast. 5 years ago, I thought my granddaughter had gone crazy for helping a stranger on the bus. Today, I know that gesture was not a coincidence, but destiny. Santiago, you came into our lives when God knew we needed you. And Esperanza, you gave this man his heart back. She raised her glass of agua de panela. To love that transforms, to family that grows, and to dreams that come true when we least expect them. Everyone toasted as the children ran through the garden and the mariachis played softly. Later, when everyone had left and the children were asleep, Santiago and Esperanza sat on the hammock he had bought at that first craft fair, the same one that now hung in their garden. "Do you know what my favorite part of this whole story is?" Esperanza asked, snuggling against Santiago's chest. "What?" "That it started with an act of kindness and turned into thousands of acts of kindness through Connect Health. And do you know what mine is?" Santiago said, caressing her hair. "What?" "That every morning I wake up knowing that the best deal of my life continues to pay me dividends every day." Esperanza laughed softly. "How many dividends?" "2 beautiful children, an extraordinary wife, a wise grandmother, a life-changing company, and the certainty that true love exists." They swayed in silence, looking at the stars over Medellin, and remembering that some encounters are destined by something greater than chance, that genuine love, when reciprocated and fought for, can create not only personal happiness but also a positive impact on the world, and that sometimes fairy tales do come true, especially when they begin with a simple act of kindness on a rainy bus, between 2 people willing to believe that magic can happen in the most ordinary places. In their garden, surrounded by the scent of Mrs. Carmen's medicinal plants and the soft sound of their children sleeping, Santiago and Esperanza knew they had found something more valuable than any fortune. They had found a love that had transformed them and the world around them. What a truly beautiful and inspiring story. It showcases the profound impact of simple kindness and the power of love to transform lives and communities. What part of Santiago and Esperanza's journey resonated with you the most, and why? Share your thoughts in the comments below.